Hello, it's Phil at Digital DJ Tips with a first look at the Allen & Heath Xone DB2 digital mixer. Now, coming from Allen & Heath, this mixer is going to have two things for sure that it does really well. The first one is going to be the effects, because of course Allen & Heath are really well known for their live effects. The second thing is going to be a really good mixer, and that's the first couple of points. As soon as you plug it in and start using it, that hit you in the face. The effects are amazing and the mixer section is amazing. But there's a lot more to this mixer than that. And there's a lot to this mixer ultimately for the digital DJ. So let's take a closer look at some of the features, and then when we've done that, I'll discuss a couple of ways you might want to use this mixer. So on first appearance, this mixer is very similar to the Allen & Heath Xone DB4. It's built the same, it's aluminium, so it's light, but it's 100% professional. Everything about it screams quality. All the knobs are rubberized, high quality metal on the selector knobs at the top here. The faders are long throw, the VU meters are all excellent. The main VU meter has got the choice of switching it between a normal VU, a dot VU that just lights the highest level, so you can see the highest level you've hit, or the kind of setting where it holds the highest level for a second, so you can see if you've gone into the red a little bit too far. Again, very typical Allen & Heath features. However, compared to the DB2, you can see it's a less scary mixer, and it attracts a price which is also less scary. When you take out this section here, it's actually, to the naked eye, to the untrained eye, quite a simple DJ mixer. There's 4 channels here, there's a crossfader, there's a microphone line, and there is the usual monitoring section, and then the outputs, booth and mix, there's also a record out. But this area here is where the complexity starts to show. Here there are 4 different selections for every single mixer line. And here you can switch between any of the inputs at the back and route them to any of the lines. So for instance, input 1 at the back I can route, input 4 at the back I can route to line 1, input 1 at the back I can route to line 4. So you don't have to have them set 4, 3, 2, 1 as I've set there. You can set them how you want. And there's a reason for that, to do with the effects that we'll talk about in a second. But also, you can switch between analog in the back, digital also in the back, and USB being computer audio. So for instance, you could have this plugged into your DJ software and have all 4 channels set to USB. Now you have 4 channels of, say, Tractor working here. But better than that, you can immediately switch back to an analog channel or to a digital input. So you can see that this input matrix is really very flexible. The effects section down here is where the mixer shows its complexity, and also where it hides its complexity, because the effects are controlled via this area here and this panel here. Now it looks quite simple. There are 2 lines, X and Y. You can send any of these lines to either X or Y. So for instance, if I wanted to send whatever I had coming through line 1 to hardware effect X, I'd simply put the line 1 toggle to X. Now, anything that's being sent through this channel via the settings at the top will go through the X or the left-hand effects. And then I switch it to Y, it will then go through the right-hand effects. This also decides whether it's on the left or right of the crossfader. So it's all quite simple. However, if I wanted to put the same channel through 2 lines, that would be absolutely fine. So for instance, input number 2 at the back, I could set to 1 and 2. I've got the 2 lights lit at the top here showing me that input 2 is going through 2 separate channels, and now both of the effects units are affecting input 2, and I can mix and match the outputs of each of them exactly how I want. So although these effects aren't daisy chained, you can have them running in parallel. But it's better than that, because within the complexity of this menu system there are all kinds of extra settings. For instance, there's 5 effects banks, if you like. There's delay, reverb, resonator, modulators and damage. Now within these 5 areas are all the main effects you would expect to find on a DJ mixer. Delay has got your delays and echoes. Reverb has got all your reverbs. Resonator has got things like reverses and decays and gritters, all that kind of colour effects, if you like. Modulator has got the flanges and phasers, and the ring modulator, all that kind of speaker modulator effect. And finally, damage is the kind of lo-fi effects, if you like, and also some other stuff that I guess they couldn't fit in easily to the other categories, stuff like slice and dice. But here's where you'll find your overdrives and your bit mashes and so on. But within each of these areas, there are a good 10 effects. So really, instead of 5 different effects, there's probably 50, and you can select them all easily using this button here. You can also select here how the effect works with the BPM. So you can select BPM to be, for instance, for the effect to cycle every beat, or all the way down to every 64th of a beat, and then up. So this is tied via a BPM engine built into this unit, which means that the unit will decide how fast your track is, and you can set the BPM range to make sure it does a reasonable job of that. So the effects themselves, apart from sounding good as I've said, are also very flexible. You have a dry and wet for each effect here, but on top of that you have the ability to filter the effects, and you can see the filters at the bottom here for the X and Y channels. So there's only 2 filters for all 4 channels. You have to decide where they're going. By turning this completely to dry, you just have a filter on each channel, and you can see there's a little light here which shows you that you've got the filter on, and it's the usual stuff. You get low pass and high pass depending on which way you turn it. So strong effects and strong mixer section and strong routing. Who's going to use a mixer like this? Well, compared to other mixers by companies pitching to the same kind of area of the market, you get a lot for your money here. What you don't get here is DVS use. You can't use this with Traktor or Serato out of the box using timecode vinyl. I have some Serato timecode vinyl on here because I've been reviewing one of the Rain mixes, but it wouldn't make sense to use this with that, because you'd need to buy a sound card, an audio interface that worked with these things, which meant that you then have a brilliant audio interface in here, and you also had a separate one just to get your timecode to work. It doesn't really make sense for DVS users. What it does make sense for is people who use things like Allen & Heath's own K2 or Traktor's X1. Now this whole mixer is Midi. In fact, there's a Midi shift function on it which knocks out the effects section and allows you to use this as a load of Midi controls as well. But the whole thing is Midi mappable, so you can map this to Traktor, and then you can use small controllers like these to control your decks and extra Midi functions while this is majoring as a mixer. So for instance, the Allen & Heath K2 can be plugged in via their own X-Link to this unit here, so you only even need one USB going to your computer. You can have a pair of these, and that's a pretty powerful digital DJing setup you've got controlling, say, Traktor. But you could use it equally as well with the X1, which could plug in. You'd need to plug this into your laptop as well, because it won't X-Link into the back of the Allen & Heath, but nonetheless, this would work really nicely. A pair of these even would work nicely, coming through all 4 channels of this mixer. So then you've got brilliant hardware effects, a really, really lovely mixer to use, and control of 4 decks really elegantly using Traktor's own hardware. So who's going to use a mixer like this? Well, it's certainly not going to be at the centre of your typical startup digital DJ setup. There's too much here that a digital DJ isn't going to use. You're probably going to use your software effects. You probably don't need the hardware effects. You don't need all the routing. However, once you suddenly come to the conclusion you don't want to carry controllers around with you, you'd like to DJ taking a laptop and 1 or 2 of these, at that point you've got a decision to make. You don't have the club's mixer at home, you need your own mixer at home, and what are you going to buy? In that kind of instance, I really can't see anything better if you're a slimline controller user than a mixer like this at home. Why? Because it's got full MIDI control over Traktor. You can actually download the mappings straight from the website. It's got full MIDI mappings that you can switch out the effects mappings, so there's more MIDI functions there. The external routing is unequivocally the best I've seen on a mixer, apart from the DB2, which is of course the bigger brother, which also adds sampling, by the way. There's no sampling on this. The routing, in fact, it's worth showing you the routing. I'll show you around the back and you'll see just how flexible this thing is. Also see how light it is. Look, it's a solid metal mixer. It doesn't weigh as much as the steel gear that Allen & Heath used to sell, still do sell. So around the back here we have the ability to plug in 4 different analog inputs, which can be CDs or phonos. There are only 2 phono switches. However, you can software RIAA attenuate the other two, so you could actually have 4 record decks plugged in there if you want. There's 2 digital ins, which means you could plug in 2 digital CDJs, for instance, as well. There's also a record out. This is the X-Link, and there's your USB. So you can see how routable this is. While we're around the back, let me just show you how much output you've got as well. XLR outs is the main out. There's also RCA record outs and booth outs, which are balanced TRSs. So you can see the amount of flexibility you get for routing this thing at home. So in your home DJ setup, you could have this at the heart of the most insanely flexible setup there is. Have your own CDJs if you wanted, have your own decks like I've got, and then also be using software, using controllers like this. And then when you go out, the controllers pop in your bag and you just plug into the house mixer. So it's kind of a dream mixer for having at home in situations like that. It's also going to be good if you're a DJ producer, and the reason for that is you can USB this into digital audio workstation software. You can use the power of the effects here, which are pretty processor intensive things, while this is handling the streaming. So you're kind of splitting the abilities between 2 CPUs, which allows you to do more stuff, especially if you then use this to digitally record. As a producer, this has got an extremely powerful sound card in it. As a producer, you can use that as part of your digital audio production workflow. Finally then, I think the price of this is really competitive. You don't get things like sampler, you don't get the ability to use your DVS with it, but what you do get is a kind of stripped down DB4 that has got a lot of the stuff that made the DB4 so successful and made people like Sasha say it was the best mixer they'd ever seen. It's something which is a lot less scary and a lot more instantly usable for people who use it for DJing, use it especially for digital DJing, but also want the ability to have the effects in their digital audio stuff as well. So there you go, the Allen & Heath Xone DB2, a quick overview of a mixer which is a nice stopgap between a standard mixer and the all bells, all whistles DB4.